Welcome to today's edition of the Rush 24/7 podcast.
Yeah, right here. Just wrapping up an email note. Greetings, my friends, and welcome. Great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh, the EIB Network, and the Limbaugh Institute for Advanced Conservative Studies. A brief departure today. Normally, it's been this way for the past, number of years, but particularly in the last 2 or 3 weeks, at least half of every day's audio soundbite roster has been about me. What I've been doing is relegating those soundbites to the last hour of the program so as to avoid any catcall criticism that I want to make this all about me. But today I can't. I've got to move this stuff to the top because it's relevant. We'll get to it. Just say, I have a question, folks. I really am bugged by something here. I'm watching all of this talk about banning the Oscars. And all these Hollywood liberals and Hollywood actors and actresses are running around saying, we can't go to the Oscars. There aren't any black nominees. It's a racist bunch. It's racism, and we're not going to go support it. If that's the case, then why aren't all good liberals boycotting the Democrat presidential primaries? Which is whiter? A list of Oscar nominees or the Democrats running for president? Is there a whiter group among those two? It would seem to me that if you're going to boycott the Oscars, which is not nearly as important as the presidential race, if you're going to boycott the Oscars because there are no black nominees, well, then it seems to me you would boycott the Democrat presidential primaries because there aren't any black candidates. This is a reasonable question to me. Clint Eastwood before I get to Eastwood, has anybody ever heard of the actress Julie Delpy? D-E-L-P-Y. I never have. I don't know who she is, but there's a big story on her. This is an independent. I guess she acts in independent movie productions rather than big studio jobs. She said the most incredible thing. This is in the New York Daily News on Saturday. Julie Delpy says nothing is worse than being a woman in Hollywood. Quote, I sometimes wish I were African American. Holy smokes! Are these people obsessed with ethnic and identity? Well, of course they are. Makes the perfect point. Indeed, darling, Julie Delpy says that she would rather be black than be a woman in Hollywood. She was in something called Before Midnight. You know what Before Midnight is? Nobody knows what that... Okay, fine. The Before Midnight star argued that women have it the worst amid uproar over this year's Lily White Oscar nom. Why aren't we seeing similar stories about the Democrat presidential primary? You talk about Lily White, not only Lily White, but I mean Jurassic Park old to boot. You got Hillary, you have Crazy Bernie, and then you've got Abs, which is Martin O'Malley, he's there for what reason nobody really can figure out. And these clowns are having a seminar tonight, or a town hall, or some such thing, on CNN, because somebody's up. Was it Bernie upset they've scheduled all these things on Saturday nights that nobody has seen? Oh no, that's not why. I take it back. They're doing this because Bernie has launched so far ahead of Hillary that the Hillary camp got hold of Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz and said, "Look, we need to do something about this." We tried to hide all this. But Bernie's skyrocketing past us, and he is. I mean, it's by a big number. Not just in the polling data, but also in fundraising. Clint Eastwood has come out and said this boycott of Hollywood by black actors is nonsensical. He said not everybody can win an Oscar. He slammed those boycotting next month's Epidemic Awards. He criticized the idea of a boycott. He said a lot of people are crying, I guess. Do you hear what's her name? Charlotte Rampling. She said, why this is an attack on, this is against racism against whites. If the blacks say they're not going to show up, then that's racism again. And everybody jumped down her throat, and she's had to clarify and restate her thoughts. They're really, really, what do you mean white? There's no such thing. And then Stacey Dash over at Fox said, you know what? This is all crazy. Not only should we stop this stupid boycott, we need to shut down BET. We need to shut down the BET Awards and all these segregate. Look, if we want to be integrated, we want to be integrated. If you want to be segregated, but you can't have both at the same time. And, of course, everybody jumped down to her throat, but Stacey Dash doesn't care. She didn't apologize or reissue any clarifications. So let's I'll tell you what, let's get started here with the, Obama, we got to get to this too. Obama says, he's very, very upset at all the polarization in the country. The interview that was broadcast yesterday morning said his inability to reduce polarization between the political parties in Washington gnaws on him as he settles into his final year in office. It's on CBS Sunday morning. And the one thing that gnaws on me is the degree of continued polarization. And he says it's gotten worse over the last several years, and I think that in those early months, my expectation was that we could pull the parties together a little more effectively. This may be the mother of all deployments of the Limbaugh theorem. This may be, not the tip of the iceberg, the piece of the cake. This may be the greatest example. Here's the guy. Not only is he responsible for the divide, he wants the divide. He wanted the divide to happen. He wanted the chaos. He wanted the disunity. It's all part of transforming the country. Now to sit around and, one thing I really regret is that I wasn't able to pull the country together. This from the guy who in the first 2 weeks in office brings the Republicans up for a congressional leaders meeting and says, look, I don't care about your ideas. I won. And that's how it works here. And by the way, you guys need to stop listening to Rush Limbaugh. That's not how things get done here. And now this guy's out running around saying the one thing that disappoints him the most is the polarization that gnaws at him daily that he wasn't able to fix. Who has done more to polarize this country? And from his first day in office. Remember him saying, I won. The Republicans are going to have to sit in the back of the bus. Remember him saying that? Remember the Republicans drove the country into the ditch and now they want the keys back? Wouldn't be a responsible thing for parents to do, he said, treating Republicans like children who wrecked a car. Remember him telling his supporters, get in their faces? Remember the Chicago way? They bring a knife, you bring a gun. They injure one of yours, you put two of theirs in the hospital. This is Barack Hussein. And he's right there wondering why he has not been able to unify. And he's not serious. This is, again, it's Limbaugh theorem. Okay, let's go to the audio soundbite. It's got some really fascinating stuff here. As we're 1 week away from the Iowa caucuses today. And it's all over the park now. You've got people weighing in on how the polls don't mean anything, particularly in Iowa. They don't mean anything for a host of reasons. You've got people beating up on Jeb Bush. I got a story, Steve Hayes here from the Weekly Standard, really laying into Mike Murphy, who runs the Bush PAC, called Raising the Roof or whatever, Right to Rise, that's what it is. And the headline, how Jeb cleared the way for Trump. Now, as you will hear, I'm being blamed for Trump. Oh, yes. Does that surprise you? Oh, I am being blamed for Trump now. But I asked Trump to run. I've been advising Trump. Yeah, right. Of course. No, they're not saying that. They're not. You'll hear what they're saying. It's coming up in the audio. But I just want to point out here. By the way, don't let anybody. I did not ask Trump to run. I don't advise Trump. People can hear that, take it out of context, might appear somewhere on some watchdog website. I did. Snerdley said that stuff to me, and I was repeating it, echoing it. It's a joke. In the old days, everybody would have known something like that was a joke. Already there are people in their pajamas getting out of bed, running to their computer keyboards. Oh, my God, Limbaugh just said he's the one that told Trump to run. Oh, my God, I got a scoop. And they're typing it up there to tweet it out. to Facebook it out. So I just want you to, it's all made up. We're just having a little fun here. Stephen Hayes, a Weekly Standard, how Jeb cleared the way for Trump. The bottom line is, you know why there's Donald Trump? It's very, very simple. It has nothing to do with me. The Republican Party, whatever you want to call it, the Republican establishment, the ruling class, I don't care what you want to call it, they are responsible for Donald Trump. They are responsible. I'll go through the reasons again here in due course if you'll hang in there and be tough. Let's go to the audio soundbites or get started on this before the first break of the hour. I'm not going to air audio soundbite number 1. We're going to go to number 2. Number 1 is simply Howard Kurtz talking to Trump on Fox News Channel on Sunday morning. And Howard Kurtz tells Trump, yeah, when Rush Limbaugh tells you to back off, you back off. And when he doesn't, you don't. I mean, it sounds like it's really... And then Trump says, no. Rush has not said any of that. Rush has been terrific. He made a point. But then he said, you got to do what you got to do. Everything's cool there, Howard. Don't sweat it. So just to get that on record, now we go to the same show, Media Buzz. Howard Kurtz speaking with the Republican strategist, Mercedes Schlapp, about National Review magazine and their anti-Trump issue. Howard Kurtz says, you saw Trump hitting back against National Review, but it's influential in the media, National Review is. Now, that is a key claim. Howard Kurtz says to his guest here, National Review is influential in the media. Is this National Review campaign against Trump as a menace to the conservative movement, is that a problem? Is the National Review issue a problem for Trump?
I don't think so necessarily. You have to understand the Trump supporter. The Trump supporter is not a subscriber to the National Review. They are getting their cues from Rush Limbaugh. There is a disconnect between these conservative thinkers, many of them who live in New York and Washington, D.C., and the rest of America.
They're not getting cues from me. They're getting cues from Trump. Why is it you have a candidate, particularly Trump? Why is it that when we're talking about Republicans, well, I know the answer to the question, I'm asking it rhetorically. Why is it that we're talking about Republican candidates, even Trump, when you start talking immediately, and even this woman's a Republican strategist, it can't be that people are making up their own minds. It can't be. No. They're taking their cues from somewhere. You people, the Republican voter, the Republicans apparently on the strategist and consultant side even believe this, that you don't have minds of your own, that what you do is the result of whoever has the most influence over you. It might be Dr. Krauthammer. It might be National Review. It might be George Will. It might be talk radio. But it doesn't matter. You are incapable of making up your own mind. And so when she, and I'm not, this is not an attack on Mercedes Schlapp. I don't even know Mercedes Schlapp. Words mean things. I listen to what people say. I'm a literalist, as you know me. I'm the mayor of Realville. She may not intend this meaning, but I'm telling you that's how I interpret it. No. Trump supporters are not subscribers to National Review. They're getting their cues from Rush Limbaugh. They're getting their cues from Trump. Trump is who they're supporting. In fact, it's really, I think it is a mistake for these people to assume that Trump supporters are not Trump supporters for specific reasons related to Trump. I don't know what they're telling themselves. Then she goes on to say here that there's a disconnect between these conservative thinkers, many who live in New York and Washington, the rest of America. That case can be made for that for anybody that works in Washington, New York, Boston, the East Coast corridor. Now we move to the Kelly file. Megyn Kelly, this is on Friday night on Fox, and she is interviewing Rich Lowry. Is there one or two bites? Let me go to the next page. See if this sets up. The one bite, here it is. This is the exchange they have.
Rush Limbaugh came out and said, this is misplaced because you overestimate the degree of conservatism in the Republican Party.
He could be right. If he is right, it's profoundly depressing. And our mission is to hold up this banner and put this flag in the ground for principled conservatism, whether it's popular or not. And in fact, sometimes the less people want to hear something, the more important it is for us to say it.
I wonder how many people might be confused or not understanding what I mean when I say that the Republican Party is overestimating its base. And I didn't say overestimating the degree, well, yeah, overestimating the degree of conservatism, but overestimating is a key word. You have to understand how the establishment defines conservatism before anybody says anything. And they look, this is true of Republicans in some cases. It's true of Democrats from top to bottom. It's true of liberals top to bottom. It's true of some Republicans, but not all. And that is the conservative base. Why do you think Jeb wants to win without it? They do not have a positive attitude of the conservative base or the Tea Party. They think of them largely devoted to pro-life. That's their main fear and rub, is they think they're all pro-life social issues, first, second, and third people. And then they want low taxes and smaller government and spending. They just, and they're overestimating, they're misdefining what it is that defines the conservatism of the base, has been my point. And as such, they are ignoring it at their peril. Anyway, I got to take a break. I'm up against it on time. Sit tight, folks. Back after this. Don't go away. So when I say overestimating the conservative base, what I mean, not by numbers. They're not overestimating the numbers of conservative. They're overestimating what they think of as conservatism. They think of conservative, the GOP moderates, the establishment, look at conservatives and see a bunch of strident, single-issue, inflexible people. And that's not who the Republican base is. That's not who conservatives are. They're much more broad-based. So when I say overestimating, I mean overemphasizing probably would be a better word. They don't understand them. I don't care what word you use. The Republican base is not understood by its own party because of a built-in prejudice and bias against it. I'm not aware I said this about National Review, by the way. I'm saying it, I've long said it about the Republican establishment. But I think when it comes down to who is and who isn't a conservative, I think even the experts in the business don't know, because of whatever prejudice they have against certain conservative policies or issues, whatever bias they've got, they don't take the time to understand really how broad the spectrum is of conservatism. It's much more than just the social issues. It's much more than just pro-life versus pro-choice. It's much more than small government and low taxes. And they use those characterizations to impugn, belittle, mock, and it goes far, far deeper. So maybe overestimate is a confusing word, but I'm not suggesting that they're overestimating the number. They're overestimating their definition, which is narrow and singular. And it's why they tend to join Democrats in thinking when it comes to who conservatives are. Anyway, back to the audio soundbite so we get back. Hey, Dean, I need you to go back to the archives and post something right now at rushlimbaugh.com. By the way, Coco's on sick day today. Coco's got a bad cough and whatever else. So Coco Jr. Dean is running it. This is a story from the, February 7th of 2014. And I wonder how many people will remember this. February 7, 2014, 2 years ago, coming up on 2 years ago, the headline, New York Times, the end of snow, ? Over the next 2 weeks, hundreds of millions of people will watch Americans like Ted Ligety and Michaela Schifrin ski for gold in the downhill alpine course. TV crews will blah, 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 blah. And they go on to talk about all the Olympic events that had to be canceled because lack of snow. Lack of snow is a big problem. Lack of snow all over the world is because of climate change and global warming. And could we be at the beginning of the end of no snow? The end of snow. They say the same thing could happen in the U.S., where in the Northeast, more than half of the 103 ski resorts may no longer be viable in 30 years because of warmer winters. The end of snow. New York Times, February 7th, 2014. Now, here's my recycled explanation again for the theory that the GOP paved the way for Donald Trump. And so did Obama, by the way. I mean, Obama's actually the starting point. It's Obama's radicalism that actually begins the process which creates a scenario where somebody like Donald Trump charges in to fill an absolutely impossibly huge vacuum. Now, we knew who Obama was. Well, I did. From even before he was inaugurated. I don't know how many Republicans looked, or today even look at Obama as a radical anything. Many of them just see him as the latest Democrat. But he's far more than that. He is the most radical leftist that has been elected president that's even gotten close to it. And because Obama was not stopped, because the Republican Party laid down, I'm telling folks, Donald Trump would not have exploded. Donald Trump would not have thought to even do any of this. Nor would any other outsider. I'm telling you, if the Republican Party had just simply, seriously tried to stop Obama, if they had just done what opposition parties are assumed to do. 2010, 2014, the Republican Party was given huge landslide victories, admittedly in midterm elections, but in both of them, one of them gave them the House of Representatives and a record number of Republicans in the House. The Democrats haven't had this few members of the House of Representatives since the Civil War. The 2014 midterms gave the Republicans the Senate. So, yeah, they were midterms, but they were huge, huge Democrat landslide defeats all the way down the ballot. On every issue that matters, on every issue that drove the turnout in 2010 and 2014, on every issue that not only drove the turnout, but resulted in massive Republican victories, the Republican Party took a dive. They did not make one serious effort at stopping Donald Trump or stopping Obama. Now they want to stop Trump, but they made not one effort to stop Obama. Now, admittedly, they couldn't have stopped Obamacare because they did not have the votes. But there wasn't, even though they didn't have the votes, they could have used the bully pulpit that they've got far more effectively than they did. They could have gone out and spent all the time they had educating people what it was, what Obamacare was. They could have done what we were doing here. They could have called Obama out on his lies, that it wasn't going to allow you to keep your doctor or your plan, that it wasn't going to reduce your premium $2,500, that it wasn't going to do anything it was promising to do. It was not going to insure the uninsured and reduce costs and make everybody available for health care, actual treatment. None of that was good. They could have gone out. They could have made the case. They could have set everybody up so that when they did get enough votes to stop it, they could have seriously made an effort to repeal it. Well, they talked repeal. They talked repeal during campaigns, but there was never one serious effort to repeal it. I don't need to remind you about amnesty and immigration and all of that. My point is that on every issue that matters, The Republican Party, which was asking for money and getting it. The Republican Party, which was asking for votes and got them, took a dive. Now they get energized. Now they get in gear. Now they get revved up. Now. And for what? To stop Ted Cruz, one of their own. You have to understand that in this environment, that is a huge vacuum. People of this country voting for Republican, even people that don't vote Republican, expect the Republican Party to try to stop what the opposing party is trying to do. That's the name of the game in politics. You supposedly bring to the table your core beliefs, your principles. When the other side wins, you stand up for yours. You do everything you can to convince people that the side that won is not good. They're going to do great harm. You set yourself up to win later elections down the road. But more than that, you do everything you can to stop what you disagree with. They didn't. And they still aren't. Now, I have nothing to do with this. Nobody on talk radio does. Nobody at Fox News does. Nobody's taking cues on Donald Trump from anybody but Donald Trump. He's perfectly capable of providing and giving the cues. He's done plenty to give people reasons to support him and to believe him. I mean, if the Republican Party had actually been opposed to Obama and acted like it, the vacuum would not have existed, making it much more difficult for Trump. When somebody comes in, enters a race, and is the only person from the outset that is voicing opposition to the status quo, and is identifying with people and their feelings about it and their thoughts about it, and is telling them he wants it to stop, why wouldn't people support that one voice? Then the primaries get going, and Ted Cruz joins that chorus. If you get two people, then maybe Rubio, but the other establishment Republicans, they've had their moments, but it's not something that the Republican Party is identified with, opposing Obama. Not by Republican voters. And by the way, the budget is the most recent example of this, but it's not just the budget. Look at all these. I mean, you can go back even the years of George W. Bush, folks, where there was no criticism of Democrats. The Democrats were out impugning, destroying George W. Bush and his administration, and by extension his voters, supporters. No defense of it, no pushback. And in fact, tell me if you remember this. You remember people like Senator McCain, Governor Christie at times, Mitch McConnell, John Boehner. I mean, pick your name. How many times do you remember them saying something like, we can't oppose Obama, that will anger the independents. We can't do that because that'll lead to a government shutdown for which we will be blamed. It doesn't matter what the issue is. Immigration, budget, Obamacare. The word had gone out. We can't oppose Obama. The independents won't like it. They'll get mad at criticism of the first black president, and they will run right back to the Democrats. So there wasn't any. And everybody else was told to shut up. Do not be critical. Do not oppose. They would tell you that we can't win elections by criticizing Obama. We can't win elections by criticizing Democrats. That's not what voters want. Voters want bipartisanship. Voters want cooperation. All of that literal BS. And so there wasn't any. They didn't even fight back on that stuff the IRS was doing to the Tea Party. Secretly, they might have actually enjoyed it because the Tea Party was competing for donor dollars. They didn't like the Tea Party. Look at the built-in majority coalitions the Republican Party punted. They could have had a majority coalition opposing Obamacare. Even when they didn't have the votes to stop it. Obamacare has never been supported by a majority of people. The majority of the American people have always opposed it. Republicans could have forged an alliance They could have branched out. They could have expanded their demographic appeal. They could have done everything they claim that the party has to do to modernize and stay viable. But they didn't do it because it would have meant criticizing Obama. And for some reason, from somebody, they were told, can't do that. We'll never win elections that way. We will lose the election if we criticize Obama. We will lose the election if we don't appear to be bipartisan and able to make Washington work. So the IRS and Obama were allowed to basically defund the Tea Party by delaying or denying the awarding of tax-exempt status to various Tea Party groups. I mean, the list of issues is endless. They said, don't be combative, don't be angry, can't win. We've had to demonstrate we can cross the aisle. We've had to demonstrate we can cooperate. We've had to demonstrate we can be bipartisan. And I'm telling you, this is not why people showed up in record numbers in 2010 and 2014 to vote against Democrats. So don't believe that Donald Trump is the product of mind poisoning from talk radio. Donald Trump is the result of the radicalism of Barack Hussein O, combined with the Republican Party not standing up and opposing any of it. Not seriously. There were words during campaigns, but when it comes to actual policies being implemented or tried, they never made Obama veto anything. He'll just shut down the government. You know the drill. There was no serious effort to stop it, which is what voters wanted. There's a huge vacuum in that sense. So here comes Trump. That's why he got into it. And his entry into the campaign shook it up. The best laid plans of the establishment were turned upside down. Quick time out. We'll continue after this. Much more here, the EIB Networks. Okay, a couple more sound bites here, and we'll get to your phone calls. This is Fox News Channel Friday night. Special report, Brett Baer. He is in the roundtable here, and here's how he opens one of the topics on the roundtable discussion.
Today, Rush Limbaugh was talking about this battle between 1 and 2, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz, and here's what he had to say.
Look, folks, you and I know the Republican establishment no more wants Donald Trump than they want Cruz. They don't want either of them, but they hate Cruz. They despise Cruz because they're afraid of Ted Cruz. Trump, on the other hand, they don't even think is a Republican. When you get right down to brass tacks of people inside the Republican Party, don't even think he's a Republican. So they move on next to Dr. Krauthammer. Ted Cruz, after playing the Bayer, after playing the clip, says, "Okay, Charles, what say you?"
There's a reason why this is now coming out, National Review, pushing back. I think they have a sense that we may be approaching a moment, an inflection point, where essentially the so-called establishment, I hate the term, the mainstream Republicans, decide to throw in the towel on the Trump candidacy, have a sense that he's inevitable. Some of them because they really can't stand Cruz, and that you may get the beginning of establishment mainstream governors or senators. You get one or two start to endorse Trump essentially as a signal that it's okay. He's become normalized.
So there's a bit of agreement, Dr. Krauthammer, with me, and the Republican establishment's enmity for Ted Cruz. And his point about National Review is that they're worried Trump is about to become normalized, and they're throwing in a towel. Don't want to throw in the towel on it, assuming he's going to be the nominee. They want to, plant the flag for conservatism here. It's a. I don't think this stuff is really hard to understand. People overanalyze this, overestimate a lot of this, and sometimes the simplest explanation for things happens to be what's right. But I want to grab the phone call quick here before we escape one this hour. Scott in Cheverly, Maryland. Great to have you on the program, sir. Hello.
Hey, thanks, Rush. Big fan. Quick comment on the National Review issue against Trump. And, of course, they purport to represent William F. Buckley and his philosophy and so forth. But I think it's useful to be reminded of the fact that Buckley once said that he would rather be governed by the first 100 names in the Boston phone book as opposed to the faculty at Harvard. And I think what we're seeing is the Republican base is basically saying, look, we're sick and tired of these feckless, establishment Republicans who are ostensibly conservative. We've given them the House, the Senate. They've done nothing. So the base is saying, let's try basically a common man. And Trump essentially represents the first 100 names in the Boston phone book. So, let's see what this guy can do. He's got the guts to confront these, the politically correct liberal fools.
Let me ask you a question point blank, Scott. Do you believe what National Review said, and others are saying, that Trump is not conservative? Number one. There's the follow-up question to that. Yes or no?
I do. I have some concerns about whether or not he is, conservative. I mean, I'm vacillating between him and Cruz, So, yeah, I do have some concerns. So, but, as I said, I think the people are.
But what you're saying is it doesn't matter. It's not the primary determining factor whether or not you're going to support the guy, right?
That's right. I mean, correct. I'm willing to take
and that
on this.
That's profound. In its own simplicity, and it's right there in front of all these people to learn. I got to go. I wish I had more time to expand on it, but I'm sure you can figure out what I'm talking about. You see this passengers from Mexico getting off the plane at New York's JFK were allowed to not go through customs. Just get off the plane, avoid customs, right through the terminal and into the city. Yep, and not for the first time. Meeting and surpassing all audience expectations every day. Rush Limbaugh, great to be with you. Telephone number, if you want to be on the program, 800-282-2882, and the email address, lrushbaugh@eibnet.com. I just got audio soundbite here that from Michael Mukasey, who is the former Attorney General. He was an AG during the George W. Bush administration. He was on Coast to Coast with Cavuto on the Cavuto Fox Business Network talking about the FBI investigation into Hillary Clinton and her private email server. And, of course, I mean, you recall everything that we have been told about this. We've been told there are 150 FBI agents tracking this down. The latest, by the way, that we have on this is that Clinton aides, and if this is true, I don't know why there hasn't been an indictment yet. If this is true, that her aides were cutting and pasting from classified documents and attaching that to emails sent to her private server. Cutting and pasting. I mean, you could argue that knowingly is worse than strictly passing on the emails or stripping the markings off. Some of that you could claim you didn't see inadvertently, but to cut and paste classified intel would mean that you have to know you're looking at classified intel. Gone is the excuse that it was inadvertent. Gone was, I didn't notice it. Gone was, the markings were taken off of it. Gone is the excuse, it's an innocent, this is purposely sought out. And to have it identified and cut and pasted into other emails, and don't forget Mrs. Clinton's email server is being mirrored to an email server over at the Clinton Crime Family Foundation, further clouding or blowing up this whole notion of security and giving greater indications of what the real purpose for this was. So here's Mukasey, who was being interviewed by Cavuto, and he said, let's say the FBI recommends taking action against Secretary Clinton. This is the thing that we heard over the weekend, that the FBI is getting close to recommending that the Department of Justice make a move on Mrs. Clinton. So Cavuto says, let's say the FBI recommends taking action against Secretary Clinton, and the Department of Justice does not follow suit. Then what?
Then I think you get the kinds of dramatics we got at the time of Watergate with resignations, and I don't think it's going to come to that. It's huge. I don't think that this is going to end happily for Mrs. Clinton, given the kind of evidence and the amount of evidence that we've already seen. Being top secret data, being her clear knowledge of what was there, and her instruction to people to send classified material in an unclassified setting.
Right, that's part of the whole cut and paste story. Take it out of the secure emails and paste it into emails that she's sending. I'll tell you what, you know what that is? I mean, that is a purposeful, willful desire to send classified data over unsecured so she can send it to people not qualified. That's what that means. She's got donors, big donors. They could be from any corporation. They could be from any entity around the world. It could be from, say, the government of San Cordoba. Pick a country. I made that one up. There actually isn't a San Cordoba. The Mission Impossible crew saved it back in the 60s on one episode. I've never gotten the country of San Cordoba. They produced rich Corinthian leather there. Anyway, somebody from San Cordoba would love to see some top secret intel. Mrs. Clinton can send it to them because they want to see it, and they've donated. So she goes to people, said, find it, cut and paste it, take it out of there. In a way, something like that would be done to hide the fact that if she sends classified emails from her server over her own network, and it's ever discovered, I mean, that's direct violation. But so to avoid doing that, that's an effort to remain undetected. Oh, no, I never sent classified email to the president of San Cordoba, not once. And technically that's true, until somebody cut and pasted whatever would have been of interest to the president of San Cordoba. And Mrs. Clinton pasted it in just a standard, ordinary, how you doing today, Mr. President email. Oh, by the way, you might be interested in knowing that. And then they paste in the intel. She's passing it on. This is deathly serious. This is, it just keeps getting worse. Mukasey is right. But here's the thing. My friend Andy McCarthy wrote extensively of this on Saturday at National Review Online. And that is the FBI can do nothing but investigate. The FBI cannot charge you. The FBI cannot indict you. The FBI cannot arrest you. The Department of Justice has to issue warrants for all of that. The grand jury indicts. So what will have to happen, this is what he was being asked by Cavuto. So what's going to happen? Well, what has to happen here is that the FBI has to convince Loretta Lynch, which means convincing Barack Hussein, that what they've got in terms of evidence is such that they can't let it slide. They can't just sweep it away. They've got, this is really, really serious stuff. And if Loretta Lynch, you know what? We're not indicting. The FBI is paralyzed. There's nothing they can do. Now, they could call the media and surreptitiously leak stuff, but in terms, if they wanted to, but then in terms of actual law enforcement, they say in New York, not law, but law enforcement, they can't do a thing. They collect the evidence, they turn it over, they recommend, they cajole. In most cases, the FBI is investigating at the request of a United States attorney or somebody else in the DOJ, or maybe they're investigating independently based on tips they've got, but they can't indict, they cannot arrest, and they cannot charge. And it's an important point. It's not big news to anybody, but there's some people thinking, what's the FBI waiting on here if they've got all this evidence? Not up to them. That's why there are grand juries. Grand juries indict. Now, sometimes a prosecutor can charge without a grand jury. But in many cases, a prosecutor who doesn't want to charge there's public pressure, mounting pressure to charge a suspect with something and the prosecutor, for whatever reason, doesn't want to, okay, off to the grand jury. And we'll present evidence in such a way. I mean, they get what they want out of the grand jury as the standard operating. You've heard the old saw that you can indict a ham sandwich if the prosecutor wants, that the grand jury's just a rubber stamp. But by the same token, if a prosecutor doesn't want to indict, they can present the case to the grand jury, make it look like there's really nothing here. I know you're seeing things in the news and this, but this is all we've got. I'm going to leave it up to you. Do you get us a true bill or no true bill? That's an indictment or no indictment. Oftentimes a prosecutor, when he wants no fingerprints on it, will go to the grand jury one way or the other for an indictment or not for one. Sometimes you don't have to get an indictment, but in many cases, it'd be something like this. You'd have to have a grand jury involved. And I don't know that there is yet. Could be. You know, they're shrouded in secrecy until they're not. Until somebody leaks, like they told us when Bill Clinton lost it when asked by that sex pervert Ken Starr how he used the cigar on Monica. So we all watched that testimony, and there wasn't anything. There was nothing to it. We were totally set up by a bunch of phony leaks. So we all know those things happen. But Mukasey here, if he says that there's overwhelming, then he's eminently credible here. You'd throw him in there and put him, even rank him higher on the credibility chart than you would Joe DeGeneva, who has also said this is apparently this cut and paste information. It is really, really serious. And it's all going to come down to Obama. I guarantee you what, I hate to oversimplify it or to simplify it, period, but if Obama doesn't want her indicted or charged, then that's what's going to happen. Now, how they get there, whatever public relations and marketing, whatever they take into account so that they don't slime themselves in the process, who knows? But we know that there is a double standard. All these IRS people, Lois Lerner, not a thing happened to them. Not a single thing. And I guarantee you, the day ever comes that a Republican president has an IRS that's denying Democrats tax-exempt status, and that's ever discovered, there is going to be hell to pay, and whoever at the IRS runs that operation is going to be strung up in public, fingernails ripped out in public, and then maybe an arm or leg cut off in public. The Democrats will see to it that it happens. Just another evidence of how the GOP, another bit of evidence about how they didn't fight back or try to stop any of that. JFK, American Airlines, New York Daily News. This story over the weekend, not a lot of people saw it because of the blizzard. Passengers arriving at Kennedy Airport on an international flight were allowed to exit the terminal without going through customs for at least the second time in recent months. Bumbling airline security officials let travelers on an American Airlines flight from Cancun, Mexico, let them out of the airport Monday morning without having their passports or bags checked. According to sources who told the New York Daily News, the security lapse mirrored a similar incident involving another American Airlines flight in November. A 34-year-old man who had been in Cancun to attend 3 Phish concerts, P-H-I-S-H, told the Daily News that he was able to glide from the plane to the baggage claim area without having to endure the usual customs and border protection security checks. You think this is accidental? I mean, given everything else, is it really incompetence? Or are they so overwhelmed with so many passengers arriving that, yeah, a flight or two gets by them now and then, and the flights just happen to be from Mexico? Hey, look at this, folks. I'm not predicting it, but you never know. Could well be that we will have another installment of Operation Chaos before the Democrat primaries are all said and done, from a blog site called First Read, and I don't know if this is part of Hotline or not. Printed out, there is no source on this, although I'm familiar with First Read. It could be Politico, could be thehill.com with one of their, here's what's going on today, little summaries of the news. But the story is this: get ready for a longer than expected Democrat race. Oh, here it is. It's from Meet the Press. It's the NBC. Yep, it's the daily, here's what's happening summary from us, NBC political unit. Get ready for a longer than expected Democrat race. On Friday afternoon, a Clinton campaign made two arguments why Bernie Sanders isn't Barack Obama 2.0, meaning why he's not a continuation of the Obama administration, why he's not automatic winner. He doesn't have the same ability to galvanize black voters, and they're not going to let him dominate the caucus events. But NBC says there's a bigger takeaway here. Clinton campaign's acknowledging that it is preparing for a long race where it'll have to grind out a win against crazy Bernie, even under a best-case scenario for Clinton, that is winning the delegates proportionally by a 60-40 margin. That means we won't see a true Democrat winner until April or May. Well, now, doesn't that sound familiar? So I'm going to tell you, if we have a Republican nominee, say, in February or March, and you heard what the Trumpster said. The Trumpster said that if he wins Iowa, that's it. He's going to run the table because nobody's close to him anywhere else. So if he wins Iowa, he can see running a table. And then you hear what he said? He said, my supporters are so loyal, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and they still wouldn't abandon me. And, of course, the media and the Democrats got all worked up about that and took him literally, thinking that he actually meant it. And even criticized him for making a gun with his hands and his finger, pretending to shoot a gun, just like they throw kids out of school for doing. So, if Hillary and the Democrats are preparing for an elongated primary, well, it would be in the interest of this program, if the Republicans already have theirs, for that Democrat fight to go on and on and on beyond March and April. And if we can figure out a way of doing that, here comes Operation Chaos 2. So we'll keep a sharp eye on that. In the meantime, back to the audio sound bites, just to continue this with all of these people reacting to me. Up next is Dana Perino. Friday night on the 5 on the Fox News channel, Eric Bolling sets it up.
Many establishment Republicans have warmed up to the idea of a Trump presidency. Rush Limbaugh knows why.
They are beside themselves with hatred for Ted Cruz that goes beyond the rational. Some of them are actually saying that they would actively, publicly support and vote for Hillary Clinton over Ted Cruz. If there is an establishment shift here to Trump, it is to cut Cruz off at the pass. No, that's not news. I mean, that's not. I'm not saying something there that nobody else has said. This has become conventional wisdom. And, of course, the RNC is getting closer and closer to think that, well, we can deal with Trump. He's the kind of guy, he's malleable. We'll be able to come to common ground with him, negotiate. But Cruz, he is so principled. He's so committed. He's such a staunch conservative. We can't weaken Cruz. We can't get Cruz talked off his game. We don't want to mess with Cruz. Trump, they think they could have an easier time with. So here's Dana Perino. They played that clip you just heard. Here's her reaction.
You talk to people at the NRCC, the Congressional Race Committee. They're planning ahead. They're thinking, if Donald Trump is the nominee, could he bring enough new voters to help us increase our majority? The thing about Rush Limbaugh, though, we kind of talked about this yesterday, is that you could be anti-establishment for the last 5 months if you were for Donald Trump. But now, if there were attacks against Cruz, now the establishment is for Trump or Cruz. I mean, it's become so diluted.
What do you think she means? I think what that is, you heard Dr. Krauthammer refer to it, so he doesn't like this term, the establishment. What did he say it is? Mainstream Republicans. I'd rather call them mainstream. I think the establishment is getting a little tired of being called the establishment. And they are angry at those of us who are pigeonholing them into one candidate or another. We all know what the establishment is, the Republican Party. I mean, it's the party that hasn't tried to stop Obama, that part of the party that has not done anything to try to stop Obama. That's the establishment. The ones who want to preserve the status quo of Washington as it is, as the central focus of life in America. And so I think Dana Perino, God bless her, I like Dana Perino, and all these others are trying to diminish this talk of the establishment by basically saying nobody knows who it is. And it changes from one candidate to the next. But we know who it is. Having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have. So Trump goes out there and basically says, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and I could shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible. He was at a rally at a Christian college in northern Iowa. So everybody has the requisite cow. It's history repeating itself. That's going to be it. I can't believe he's running around talking about shooting people. That's going to be it. It's one thing to say you think McCain should have been captured and you don't like him because of that. It's another thing to say what I said about the Mexicans. But now to say you can actually shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, he's going to implode. Literally, this is what people are. Governor Christie said that he couldn't believe Trump would say this. He was astonished when he heard that Trump had gone out and said he could shoot somebody and wouldn't lose voters. He was at a town hall in Portsmouth. He said, look, I don't know whether it's true or not, but it's pretty amazing to say it. And then Christie said, look, I want to burn down Washington too, because it's so ineffective, but who's going to do? So here's Trump says, yeah, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and it wouldn't hurt me. And Christie, I can't believe he said that. Look, I want to burn down Washington too. And then the Fox News poll. Donald Trump has taken back the Iowa lead, an 11-point surge. In the last 2 weeks, according to the poll, Trump has gained 11 points. Cruz has lost 4. Marco Rubio remains a distant third with 12%, but he's lost 3 points since the earliest days of January. No mention of Jeb Bush in the latest Fox poll. You want to really irritate people? You tell them, what did Trump do? Why? I mean, Cruz was gaining ground. What did Trump do? If you want to really tick them off, just say, must be the Palin endorsement. You will drive them crazy. They will go insane. We have any more here before we get back to the... yeah, but let's go to the phones. People have been patiently waiting. We'll mix it up here. We'll go back to Pittsburgh. Jack, great to have you on the EIB network, sir. Hello.
Rush, very nice to speak to you today.
Thank you, sir. Thanks very much.
Yeah, listen, full disclosure, I'm a Trump supporter. I haven't always been, but I am now.
Well, when were you not?
I originally liked Scott Walker. I thought he was such a tough guy over there in Wisconsin, and what he did with the unions and all their money that they brought in. And this is from a retired union guy. And I thought what he did was fantastic.
It was. It was amazing.
Yeah, and
he was an early on favorite of the first Iowa vote taken way, way, way back. I mean, he was killing it. He was in the 70s.
I know. I wish he hadn't have dropped out. I don't know what happened, but anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you just since you asked it. What happened was it at least according to people that I knew who were for him and then changed their mind. It was because his answers on foreign policy to them seemed unprepared. Is the only thing I heard. There may be other reasons, and I don't know, but that's anecdotal things I heard from people who were eager for him, but got to foreign policy, they began to question the well-roundedness. I don't know how else to say it, but
Okay.
Anyway, so you're with Walker, then you gravitate to Trump now, and that's where you are now.
No, Cruz.
Cruz, right?
Yes, maybe it's just me when I look at Donald Trump, especially during the debates. He's up there, and I just don't get it, Rush. I've heard you explain it over and over and over again why he is where he is, and I still don't get it because all I see is a grown man who acts like a 13-year-old up on the stage when he's standing there making all the stupid faces and all the mudslinging and the name calling. You know, he just sounds like a 13-year-old to me.
Okay, let me see if I can actually describe this. So here he is. Here's Trump on the very first day he's announcing, and he says what he says about Mexicans. And you're thinking, did you see that, by the way, that first day?
Yes.
Okay. You saw Trump's announcement. You're probably laughing yourself silly. You're thinking, this is hilarious. This guy can't be serious. There's no way. He's telling jokes. He's saying this stuff about Mexicans. And then you find out a couple days later that everybody ate it up, and you can't believe it. You can't. And then the first debate comes, the Megyn Kelly stuff happens, and you think, he's finished. You just don't talk that way. And he wasn't finished. He started gaining support, and you're saying, how can the hell this happen? And then he starts with these, like you say, childish name-calling insults at people. And with each instance of it, you think, you know what? At some point, people are going to wake up. This is all. They're going to abandon him, and they don't. In fact, according to polling data, his support increases, and you don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense to you because it just doesn't. In a polite sense, in an adult sense, like you said, it just doesn't make sense to you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And you know, one thing he always brags about is how he's a deal maker.
Yeah.
Well, where has that gotten us in the past few election cycles? I mean, I've heard you say it again and again that Republicans are always caving. You know, we don't need somebody to make deals right now. You know, we don't need somebody to go in.
Oh, he's not talking about
their phone either. And I think Donald Trump would be the dictator that Obama always dreamt of being.
Yeah, I've heard people say that. I've heard people express that.
You know, I think Obama would be nothing compared to what Trump will be. Because if he thinks he's getting criticized now,
wait a minute.
Wait till he's in office.
Let me ask you a question, Jack. What if Obama is a dictator implementing things you support?
No, I still don't like it.
Well, Obama's supporters do.
Well, once it turns around and if we get a dictator like a Republican dictator, the other side isn't going to. I want a real constitutionalist like Ted Cruz.
Right. I know. I'm playing. This is a learning exercise for me.
I understand. I just don't want a dictator on either side.
Well, one thing, when Trump starts talking about making deals, he's not talking about making deals with the Democrats in Congress. That's not the kind of deal making that he's talking about. Well, at least I could be wrong. The kind of deal making I think he's talking about is like with the Iranians and with the Chi-Coms, and basically foreign policy and economic related trade deals, that kind of thing, where he thinks that we're getting beat and getting creamed and losing because they got stupid, incompetent people making the deals. But then when you see him criticizing Cruz for not willing to make deals with the Democrats in Washington because you can't get anything done that way, then I say, wait a minute. That's the kind of criticism that the Republican establishment's offering up of Cruz, and you probably think he would make deals with the Democrats. If he's criticizing Cruz for not doing it, it means he wants to, and that's what you're fed up with, right?
Exactly. I mean, he's already made deals with too many people. I mean, I don't want to bore your audience. You've already gone over all this. The interview with Tim Russert that all is going around right now, and how he said in the past that Hillary would make a great president, and she'd get smart people around her. And which brings me to another point is I've never once heard Donald Trump say anything about government being too big All he ever says is we have stupid people in there.
Okay, so
all
Jack,
he's going to do is bring the right people in.
Jack, a question for you.
Yes.
You are not by any means the only one who thinks these things.
Right.
So tell me, in your own opinion, your own words, why do you think people supporting Trump who agree with you are still supporting Trump? Why does it not matter? Do you
I have no idea. That's why I don't get it. I just don't get it. You know, and I hear a lot of smart people on TV. They're not endorsing Trump, which I know you're not either. But every time he says something stupid or makes another, ridiculous, everybody just laughs it off and dismisses it and say, "Oh, well, that's just Trump being Trump." You know, it's like Joe Biden on the other side. That's just Joe being Joe. And
yeah,
I don't want somebody that's. I mean, the man certainly is not presidential.
Well,
to me.
Clinton was lying with every other sentence. People would say, "Man, doesn't he do it so well?" Man, and I think there's a bit of that with Trump. My God, this guy gets away with this stuff, and it never comes back to bite him. It's incredible. Like the media always marveled at how Clinton got away with lying. I mean, blatantly, openly, right to your face. They ate it up because he got away with lying to conservatives. And so it's not unprecedented that this kind of reaction to people in politics, it's always frustrated us. Obama. I mean, it's clear as a bell who Obama is and what he's doing. You can't get the drive-bys to report on it. You can't get the Republican Party to even say it.
Yeah. Well, I guess my last point would be then, and I'm not, like you tell your callers, I'm not looking for a fight or a debate, because, well, I certainly can't debate you. But since you are one thing I've wondered is, since you are the CEO of the Limbaugh Institute for Conservative Studies, and conservatism is the only way to bring this country back, why you're not pushing back a little more on Trump, since it's clear, and you've said he's not even running as a conservative.
I have made that observation.
Yes, I know, and you've been very fair to Cruz as well. I think you've been fair to all the candidates.
I have.
But I'm just afraid that the country is going to be not any better off with Donald Trump as president than we have with Barack Obama.
That is interesting, because I don't think there could be anybody as bad.
Well, you may.
I mean, I'm not just putting some words together to make a sentence here. What I mean by this is, I would take anybody on that Republican stage over Obama or any Democrat running. And I don't think it's a contest. There's not a single one of those Republicans I wouldn't vote for if they became the nominee against Hillary Clinton. Not a single one of them. I think the Democrat Party has got to be sent packing. I'm not that hard to understand. I've said it over and over and over again. You can interpret it however you wish, but it doesn't require a lot of interpretation. What has to happen, and not just in one election, we've got a huge task ahead of us. The Democrat Party and liberalism has got to be stopped. It has to be cut short. It has to be rendered minority irrelevant. And I'll tell you how deep the task is. Even if you like Cruz, if Cruz wins this election, I don't have to tell you the long knives are going to be out for him from within his own party. But beyond that, Jack, the left has election insurance. They own a majority of the judges who write their own law. When you want to talk about the bureaucracies and the cabinet-level agencies, the EPA, the IRS, you name it, there are career leftists and liberals there that even when they lose the presidential election, their influence over regulation and any other thing that comes out of the bureaucracy doesn't take a hit. It's going to require a deep-seated, concerted effort to stop liberalism in its tracks wherever it is found. It's a long project here, and it has to have a long view. And there are many elements of making this happen that go beyond just winning elections. But that, to me, I mean, they're the ones who've gotten us where we are. They're the ones who are destroying the traditions, the institutions. They're destroying the economy. They're destroying the health. They're destroying everything they touch. They're destroying the U.S. military. They're destroying American force. They're destroying this country on purpose in order to change it into something they think it should be and should never have been as founded. That's got to stop. That comes before anything else to me. Back after this. And we stay on the phones to Arcata, Florida. This is Larry. Larry, hello, sir. I'm glad you waited. You're next. Hello.
Thanks so much, Russ. It's an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to submit something to you. I'm a little nervous. I'm an ordained minister, and I think I know what the underlying core is that moves people towards Trump. I supported Trump before he even announced he was running.
How could you do that?
Because I saw the man.
Well, but he wasn't running. How could you support him before he was running?
He had talked about it. He had talked about running.
Okay.
And I'm so conservative. I jokingly say at times you're liberal. So I love your show. I love you.
I appreciate it.
But what brought us to Trump? What brought me to him? And other pastors don't understand why I support him. Is the fact the Puritans settled in America and they tried socialism, and they nearly starved to death. And so they searched the New Testament and found an economic system based on 30, 60, 100-fold return on investment.
Right.
And invented a new system called capitalism.
Free market economics. Absolutely right.
Yes,
William Bradford, right there in the journal. Absolutely right. 100% right so far.
Swept through the colonies, we became the first Christian capitalist nation in the history of the world. And in less than 200 years, became the most powerful nation in the world.
And the first racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobic nation in the world.
No, not really.
According to the critics, I'm just playing devil's advocate with you.
But it's so intrinsic into our belief structure that we don't. I think a lot of people don't even think about the fact that deep down they're capitalist, and they gravitate towards Trump because we see this not as this is beyond conservatism. It's not just conservative against liberal. It's capitalism against socialism. And you're right. The Democratic Party is the Socialist Party of America.
And they've got to be stopped.
We can't abandon capitalism like Europe has done, or we'll wind up in the same shape they're in.
Right. But isn't conservatism isn't it the same thing as capitalism?
I'm sorry?
Isn't conservatism pretty much with capitalism? Aren't they inexorably tied?
They ought to be, but I think there's a confusion in who they really are. But they do know that there's something they don't like. I don't mind giving my money away. I don't want someone else doing
the truth is it's all been corrupted with crony something or other. Crony capitalism, crony socialism, cronyism has corrupted it. See, the left thinks that capitalism is by itself corrupt. It's not. Cronyism is what corrupts. Anyway, Larry, I get your point. It's not. Conservatism should not be the defining element of the opposition. Here's what he's saying. The New Yorker, an interesting cover on Donald Trump and a curious analysis of it. Be back in just a second. Yes, sir, Bob. Greetings and welcome back, my friends. Rush Limbaugh, your guiding light through times of trouble. There are times of confusion when things don't seem to be making any sense whatsoever. When times of depression and despair overcome everyone, I remain your guiding light, as well as during the good times. And there will be the good times. Again. In fact, sometimes they happen now. Depends on how lucky you get at night. Telephone number is 800-282-2882. And the email address, lrushbo@eibnet.com. So the funniest thing over the weekend during show prep, what was this? It was on, I guess it's Saturday. Here we have this major blizzard that has stormed the Northeast. 2 years ago, the New York Times has a story in which they're serious about the end of snow because climate change and global warming, at the time they wrote it, the ski slopes were empty and bare or way, way, way below normal. And so capitalizing and politicizing everything, which the New York Times does, here came a big story essentially saying that we're looking here at the end of snow very soon. Next 20 years could be the end of it. Might not be any more snow. Well, which is absolutely flat out ridiculous. It's worse than journalistic malpractice. Just flat out ridiculous. But like every other one of their global warming predictions, it's years, decades down the road. It's not tomorrow or next year. So the snowfall, this blizzard of this past weekend, cannot be said to have discredited their story. But in the meantime, in an effort to save the planet, these truly wacko leftists have invested in solar power and wind power and all these supposed renewables, which there really isn't, not really possible. But it sounds good and it sounds clean. And one of the things that the wacko environmental left has done in the pursuit of wind power is to build these gigantic windmills that need turbine engines to move them in case the wind doesn't. What do you do if there isn't any wind? And if that's all you're relying on, so what do you do for electricity? Well, you have to have a little turbine up there, relying on what? Fossil fuels in order to turn the windmill, the propeller. They look like giant airplane propellers. I'm not even going to get into how many birds die with these things. I have a picture here of one of these windmills that was frozen solid during a recent winter blast. What to do? You know what they had to do to get it was iced up? There was ice all over the blades. There was ice all over the motor. The blades had been rendered so heavy because of all the additional ice that had frozen on them that the wind, even strong wind, could not turn. So you know what they had to do? They had to gas up a helicopter. Then they had to turn on a giant water heater. Then they had to load hundreds of gallons of hot water in a giant pot, a helicopter big enough to get the thing off the ground. They had to fly over the windmills and dump the hot water from the giant pot being towed by the helicopter on the propellers of the windmill farms to get the ice off of them so that they could once again begin. Do you realize how much, according to the wacko left, wasted energy was involved in making their precious windmills work again? And I have here a picture of it. And it's got a quote from Albert Einstein imposed over the picture. The Einstein quote is, "Only two things are infinite, the universe and human stupidity." And he is exactly right. So you have a helicopter that's burning aviation fuel. It's hated. It's just, oh, God, it's fossil fuel like gasoline. Yuck. Hot water. It required a massive heater to heat the water. I mean, we're talking about, what was the temperature, 25, 26 degrees? Had to heat the water and keep it hot enough that it would remain hot while being lifted by the helicopter high enough. And then they had that somebody good aim on the helicopter dumping the water on the frozen windmill. And this is just one. Actually, it's a spray. They have a fire hose up there that's connected to the hot water container that they control from the cockpit of the helicopter. But just absurd, just literally absurd stuff. And if there were no fossil fuels, if they leftists like Obama had succeeded, and there wasn't any way to get a helicopter off the ground, and there wasn't a way to heat the water because we had not used those sources anymore, then people who depend on wind power for their electricity would have been frozen to death. And this is called innovation and forward thinking. The New Yorker has a cover story on Donald Trump. I have not seen the New Yorker story, so I don't know if the New Yorker is for Trump or not. I can't tell, because this is actually a Mother Jones story, a leftist publication, a bunch of wackos themselves. And they're talking about the cover of the New Yorker magazine, which has got George Washington on it, Abraham Lincoln, Teddy Roosevelt, and FDR. And the point that Mother Jones is making is what is distasteful about Trump is not that he offends old-fashioned American values. Trump is distasteful. This is to the leftists at Mother Jones. Trump is distasteful because he taps into certain old-fashioned American values like nativism, brash, tough talk, slow-burning authoritarianism, and family dynasties that have played a very consequential role throughout American history. And Trump embodies all of it. Now, it's interesting, the guys on the cover, Teddy Roosevelt considered by many to be one of our great presidents, Mr. Snerdley. My grandfather loved Teddy Roosevelt. My grandfather loved, and he was a down-the-middle Republican like nobody else ever was. He loved Teddy Roosevelt. He loved Teddy. I mean, I interviewed him on his 100th birthday in Kansas City. It was an American Bar Association meeting. Went on and on and on. He thought Teddy Roosevelt, greatest president ever, because of the innovation that Roosevelt brought to the country, among them the Navy. But there was a thing about Teddy Roosevelt was a get-it-done kind of guy. Today, it would be called slow burner or slow-burning authoritarianism. And, of course, Roosevelt's family dynasty and so forth. But Teddy Roosevelt was big pro-America. I mean, going down there, building the Panama Canal, nativism, so forth. Expanding federal lands, creating national parks, and so forth. Many people looking back on Teddy Roosevelt think of him as the first big government president, but people back then loved him because he was pro-America, unabashed, America first, always. And so we have this New Yorker cover here. And again, I don't know what the New Yorker story is, because the story here about the New Yorker cover is from Mother Jones. And it's Mother Jones analyzing Trump, not the New Yorker. So it's just the cover picture that I have here. I don't have any idea what the New Yorker says. Give you a flavor of this, as written by Mother Jones. My gosh, where to start? Teddy Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt, George Washington, John Kennedy, Abraham Lincoln. Those are the guys on the cover, actually. Looking on in disbelief at the mess Trump is making of the presidential election. Teddy Roosevelt backed a racist imperial war and said white women using birth control were committing race suicide by turning their country over to less fair-skinned people. I don't know that Roosevelt ever said this. Mother Jones quoting him on this. FDR, the architect of Japanese internment. JFK, other than his personal life, makes Trump look like Ned Flanders. Started a land war in Asia we're still recovering from. And George Washington owned people and bought an election by getting people drunk. So this is who Mother Jones is comparing Trump to. These interpretations of some of the greatest Americans who've ever lived. Now, I don't know how many Trump supporters are going to run into the New Yorker or Mother Jones, but if they do, it's just going to reaffirm their support for Trump to have him insulted this way, because this is not how people see Trump. You know, one of the ways people see Trump and Ted Cruz and even to a lesser extent, Marco Rubio, one of the identifying characteristics of the American electorate, and I think this would probably be true even of some on the Democrat side, is fear. What is that? Oh, it must be the printer behind me, stupid fax machine. There is genuine fear in this country. But the question is, fear of what? For some people, the fear is they're out of work and they can't find a job, so the fear is economic. But even people who have jobs, even people who have careers, they're afraid. What are they afraid of? They're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. They're afraid they're going to lose their 401ks. They are afraid they're going to lose everything because they look at trends in the country and they see everything going in the wrong direction. The Democrats are afraid, some of the Democrat base is afraid that the Republicans are going to win and roll back gay marriage and roll back Obamacare and roll back all this liberal socialism that they think they've got. It still hasn't made them happy. But there's another fear that isn't much spoken of, that I think these other fears are legitimate, but there's a fear greater, maybe even be the umbrella under which all these other fears fall. And that fear, and it's big, is of the government. And this fear of government runs pretty much throughout the Republican base. It's a legitimate fear. It's embodied by every time Obama and the Democrats start bellyaching about guns. You know, that's constitutional. That's the Second Amendment. They know that if Obama's serious, he's going to do something that violates the Constitution and that the Constitution won't stop him. It's a fear. Others are fearful of the unstoppable growth of the federal government and what that means. Others are afraid of the endless regulation coming out of Washington that's not backed up by legislation that is nothing but punitive. People do not feel joined with their government, and they certainly don't feel that there is a unified sense of purpose from citizen to government. The fear is government versus citizen. The Republican Party has no way of relating to that. They poo-poo it. They make fun of people afraid of government. To them, that strain of the Republican base or conservatism, those are the real kooks. What do you mean afraid of government? You tinfoil head conspiracy theorist? That's what they think. But the fear of government's real. The fear of government's justified. You look at the IRS and the Tea Party groups, which were denied tax-exempt funding. Obviously political. There are a lot of people with a legitimate fear of government. If you have a job and are afraid of losing your job, what's the real fear? The government's going to mess things up, or they're going to purposely do it, or something's going to happen, but somebody not responsible is in charge of the economy and is making a mess of it. The umbrella fear is fear of government. Well, who out there happens to be talking about the incompetence and incapability of the government louder than anybody else is? That would be the Donald and Cruz as well. But with the Donald, it's an identifying characteristic. He never even utters the words. A caller moments ago, I never hear Trump talk about big government. He does all the time. He just doesn't use the words. He talks about liberals all the time. Doesn't use the word. He talks about conservatives all doesn't use the word. Exactly the advice Pat Buchanan was given back in 1996. Go ahead, do everything. Do not call yourself a conservative, Pat. It'll narrow your identity. You don't need any help from other. Just Pat couldn't do it. He was so tied to the conservative movement in the party, he couldn't do it. But Trump can, since he's never really been associated with either political party. It's an open question. But everything Trump talks about much of what he talks about is rooted in opposition in one way or another to things happening in government, to people from government. And that is, if the media will go out and start interviewing people about this and delving into why you support Cruz, or why do you support Trump, or what, if they kept digging, and the media won't, because they don't understand it either. All these people, the government is loved by the Democrats. The media loves government. My God, it's where they all make their money. It's where they all make their living. The idea of government getting smaller, unacceptable, not possible, will not happen. Same thing with the Republican establishment. Their jobs depend upon a big, thriving, active government. But one of the primary tenets of conservatism, small government, out-of-the-way government, it's as much a part of this campaign as if somebody were mentioning the words each and every day. The difference is the words are not being mentioned, but the message is getting through. And back to the phones we go. This is Jonathan in Naples, Florida. Great to have you on the program, sir.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you.
Just calling, just wanted to say, I'm feeling the same way I did back in about 2008 when I was in school in Tallahassee. I ended up leaving the country after the BP oil spill. I got a settlement from them, and I ended up leaving to go down to Honduras. Spent a couple years down there because I couldn't handle what was going on here.
Wait a minute. Why did you leave after the BP oil spill?
Well, after Obama got elected, and I was going to college. I was going to college in Tallahassee, and after all that, and I couldn't, all the craziness that was going on with that, and
you mean it was Obama's election and all that drove you out?
Yeah, just bummed me out. And then after the BP oil spill, I was living down in Naples, Florida, and I got a $10,000 settlement. I took that and went down to Central America.
Okay, gotcha.
And after that, I came back after about 3 years down there, and now with this election, I'm feeling the same way. I feel a little bit of hope, though, with Trump running.
You feel a little bit of hope with Trump?
A little bit of hope. I feel like he'll actually go in there and clean a little bit of house and get some new people that aren't career politicians in there.
So you wouldn't mind a little authoritarianism in that way?
I guess you could put it that way. Just someone who will let people know that we're not going to put up with some of the same BS that's been going on.
One of the fears that I have seen people register on our side is they oppose Obama and his executive actions, his executive orders. But the fear is that they would support one of their own acting in the same way, but to erase what Obama has done. And then they say, that would be very bad. We can't have people on our side also supporting authority, even for good, no matter what the purpose. We can't have people who think that's how Washington works. But we might have, folks, given the degree of frustration people have with the country hanging in the balance. And we are back. Your guiding light, Rush Limbaugh. Half my brain tied behind my back just to make it fair. Yeah, I've got this immigration stack I've got to get to. A couple things here, folks. Ben Shapiro, recent interviewee, Limbaugh letter. Young, brilliant conservative, located many places, has a piece on the Daily Wire here. 3 reasons the Iowa polls might not predict a Trump win. Now, there are a lot of people. I had somebody say to me last night, Rush, I don't believe these Iowa polls. Iowa's different. You got to show up and caucus. It's just not vote. It's you've got to actually go there. And this person cited what is in the drive-by media. Trump doesn't have a ground game. He really doesn't have a ground game. It's a big, different thing in Iowa. But you can't just fly in there and make speeches and fly out. You got to have an organization. So there are a lot of people. I myself used to be one of these guys. The polls can't. I've been forced to bite the bullet every time I thought the polls weren't right. There's been maybe one or two occasions. But I wanted to share this with you anyway from Ben Shapiro. He says, over the weekend, Trump took commanding leads in a bunch of new polls out of Iowa. Fox News leads Ted Cruz by 11 points. According to CBS, he's up by 5 points. CNN, he's up by 11 points as well. The only poll in which Ted Cruz holds a lead is something called a KBUR poll. And in that poll, Cruz leads by 2 points. The only poll Cruz leads, and it's within margin of error. That's a significant swing in Trump's favor just in the past few days, and part of it, Shapiro writes here, is surely driven by Sarah Palin's endorsement of Trump. If that's true, folks, you do not know. Well, maybe you do know. The manifest frustration with Sarah Palin among many conservatives and some Republicans. And the fact that Trump's doing well is bad enough. If Palin is helping him, that's, keep away from sharp objects time. That's called the little men in white coats. That'll drive them over the edge. That Palin would be effective. Oh, no. They would be of the mind that Palin would hurt Trump. Because they think Palin hurt them. They don't think it was McCain that was the problem. But anyway, Shapiro says there are 3 reasons that the Iowa polls might be all wet, gravely exaggerated, predicting a Trump win. The first is that polls in Iowa are historically bad. For example, at this point, Rick Santorum, the eventual Iowa winner, was polling at 7% in the Real Clear Politics average poll when he won it back in, whatever, Santorum won it in 08 or 12. I forget what Santorum, somebody, the last 2 winners of the Iowa caucus, the Republicans, Santorum, and before that it was somebody that also didn't go anywhere. But anyway, his point is that Santorum, who won it, was at 7 points 1 week out. He was 6th in the field after Ron Paul, Mitt Romney, Newt Gingrich, Rick Perry, and Michelle Bachmann. He eventually ended up winning the caucuses with 24% of the vote. Oh, it was Huckabee in 08. In 2008, 1 week ago, Mike Huckabee was leading by 3 and ended up winning by nearly 10. In 2008, the Real Clear Politics poll average placed Obama at 31%, Hillary at 29%, John Edwards at 26%. They ended up 38, 30, and 29 for Clinton, meaning there's a lot of variability. So that's one bit of evidence. The second reason that Shapiro cites why the polls in Iowa might be wrong is that they're quite broad. After 2012's poll-doubting debacle, I have vowed not to doubt polling data as a general rule, he writes. But I'm not the one doing the doubting. Nate Silver of 538.com, probably America's leading polling guru, at least by reputation, says a lot of differences in these polls are based on how tightly polls are screening voters. And then the third reason to doubt the polls is that in Iowa, endorsements matter. Because Iowa is a caucus state, it means that candidates' representatives lobby voters before the voters raise their hands, and endorsements matter an awful lot. On-the-ground organization does too. That's why Nate Silver's site still has Cruz with a 48% chance of winning the Hawkeye, and Trump at 41%. So we'll see. Nate Silver is the guru. Everybody on the left loved Nate Silver until he left the Times and went to ESPN, and they thought he was a sellout. But the 538 site gives Cruz a 48% chance of winning Iowa and Trump 41. Yet here's the Fox News poll with Trump up to an 11-point lead. Another thing I wanted to share with you. I have a good friend who is loves this country dearly, along with his friends. And he has put together a website that probably was a little bit more relevant in previous elections, this one being an outlier. But what this website does, and I'm just touting this as an interesting thing for you to go look at, because it's a indication of the cross section of interest that there is in the presidential race. What this site chooses to do, it's one of these sites where you go, and all the candidates on the Republican side, Democrat too, are listed, and everything they believe policy-wise has been recorded. The website is leadershipprojectforamerica.org, and it is current. It's comprehensive information on all the presidential candidates. It has probably the most detailed, objective grading of the candidates, and a whole bunch of people involved in it to put it together. The idea behind this website is, let's say that you believe in small government, low taxes, but you believe there should be Medicare and all that. You're able to input this, and it finds the candidate for you. That's its objective. The theory is that it's impossible for every citizen to know everything about every candidate because the news media treats them differently. You would have to go to each candidate's website and then wade through all the policy statements that they publish about themselves, and then you'd have to believe it. And what this site seeks to do is synthesize all of that for you. Now, I told my friend, you realize Trump throws this all out of kilter, because none of these things that you have as factors matter in terms of Trump's support. I mean, Trump, I do think Trump has more issue-related support than people acknowledge. But there's also a whole lot of other reasons that Trump, I actually think that this guy that called us last week, the 28-year-old millennial, who offered the explanation for why none of this stuff that Trump says, like stepping in it or making a faux pas statement or a politically incorrect statement, the reason those things don't matter to him is because most of the people supporting Trump not really personally invested in Trump, but rather invested in what the Trump campaign is and what it represents. And it's outside the establishment. It's, all these things about outsider versus insider. That it's not strictly focused issue-based, although for some people it is. You get the immigration. I think people who think Trump is not issue-based really sell short the importance of the immigration issue in launching Trump's whole campaign. And the fact that he has not been contradictory about that. He hasn't changed his original statement. He still keeps talking about building the wall or Mexico paying for it or what have you. And it was the thing that put him on the map, and I think it's the glue for his support base. There are other things, too, that Trump supporters, I'm sure, are issue-oriented about and support him, but it's in many cases it's even beyond that. My point is, I think some people support Trump even when they know that he might be inclined to do something, one or two things that they disagree with. Their attitude is, I don't care. You know what? I'm not single issue. I'll take the best deal I can. This is the best guy I know of to shake something up. I need it shaken up. I don't like the insiders. I don't like the establishments of either party. But anyway, this site, it may include Trump, too. I haven't checked it lately, but I promised the guy that I would mention it to you. And it does provide, if you really are interested in finding out, you start out with your set of things that are important to you. This website is supposed to produce the candidate closest to the issues you identify as you visit the site that are important to you. So if you have time, check it out. It's an interesting exercise. And then you can also judge how good a job they've done at actually assembling this data. Again, leadershipprojectforamerica.org. And I have a brief timeout we have to take. We'll be back and continue after this. Hi, how are you? Welcome back, Rush Limbaugh Talent. On loan from God. This is Derek in Houston. It's great to have you, sir. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The problem I have with Trump.
The problem you have with Trump.
No, sir. I'm saying the problem I have with Trump. My apologies. The problem I have with Trump is that when you have a candidate that builds his support based on the cult of personality and has blind followers who love him because of that instead of his ideas, and even worse, when that personality is so different from his past personality, you set up a president just like Obama who will bend to the establishment party leaders instead of leading himself. We don't need a celebrity Republican president as much as we didn't need a celebrity Democrat president. We need a president with a proven record of being who he is and doing what he says. I think we need a man like Ted Cruz who did what he said he would do in Texas and did what he said he would do in the Senate.
Yeah, that's true. He did. I don't disagree with you that Ted Cruz does not vacillate. He doesn't disappoint, doesn't say one thing and go do the other.
You asked the previous caller, sir, why it doesn't matter to most voters. And my answer to that would be Eleanor Roosevelt once said, small minds discuss people, average minds discuss events, and great minds discuss ideas.
That's why this show is so successful. That's exactly right.
I think most voters just go for the personality they see at the debate, and they don't go further.
So no wrong answer here. I don't infer a tone here in my question. So you think that most of Trump's support is not related to issues or substance that he has mentioned, but rather that he's the celebrity apprentice host? I agree, sir. I do. And I believe that Trump kind of verified that himself recently by saying if he shot somebody in Times Square or whatever, that no one would care. That's because they love him because of his persona, which he's developed to be a candidate. It's not who he truly is. I think if Trump thought it was more profitable to be a Democrat and he could gain more power as a Democrat, he would, and he tried that. But today, being as smart as he is, he sees a better chance as a Republican. Okay, well, let's see if your criticism hurts Trump at all. It happened on the Rush Limbaugh program. You just took a pretty good swipe at Trump. Let's see if you're able to bring his poll numbers down tomorrow. Back after this. Would you say, let me just quick question here going out to think of this. Would you say that Trump is conservative on immigration, national security, and jobs? You would? You think Trump's conservative on all three of those? Those may be some of the biggest three, right? You think he's conservative on that? Okay. And he wants to get rid of Obamacare. That's fourth thing. Okay. Well, I'm just asking. That's all I'm